Hey, Bear Weight Nation. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic today. First off, everyone, I want to say thank you so much. I just hit my first milestone of 100 subscribers. Woohoo. So I'm looking forward to that next 1,000 subscriber milestone and many, many more. So, guys, hope you enjoy the journey that we're going to create together. I hope you enjoy the content I create and everything else that comes along with that. I'm going to always create videos every week. That's my goal. At least a video a week, and all I focus in on is physical fitness, the workouts I do, the supplements I take, the pharmaceutical stuff I take, and talk about my journey with that and everything else. And of course, I love reacting to videos. I love seeing some of the other people in this industry, what they're bringing to the table and what I've learned from them. And maybe hopefully I can kind of give some ideas out there as I've learned from them, kind of put my experience in there too. And maybe you can learn something new, because we always can learn something new. I'm still learning every day. I'm only in my 30s, but every single day there's something new to learn. So hopefully you enjoy this, guys. But today I want to talk about the king of kings, the workouts of workouts, deadlifts. Deadlifts are the hardest workouts, in my opinion. They're one of the hardest workouts, but they're my favorite. It's literally one of my favorite workouts. So kind of give you an idea why I wanted to bring this up is because I saw a recent clip from Mind Pump Clips. It's kind of been running around the internet for a while, for the last year. So you might have already seen it, but I thought it was kind of good to touch base with it because they're talking about why deadlifts are important. And I kind of want to talk about this from my point of view because I actually had an injury in my early 20s where I actually slipped a disc in my lower back. And unfortunately with that disc slip, I ended up tearing my labrum, and so basically, or my vertebrae, I should say. So my vertebrae actually cracked, and unfortunately, I also had a 50% slip in the disc, and because of that, I couldn't train anymore, or I was limited to training. So I was pretty much in pain consistently. A lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of sciatica, and because of that, I eventually had to look at alternatives of maybe surgery, look at, supplementation or injections of something. And I just couldn't find anything because I really didn't want to go down the surgery path. So I just made the decision to go ahead and start training after about a year and a half of taking a break. And I was taking a big risk. And one of the biggest things that I learned is deadlifts are actually one of the things that actually helped me recover because I was able to rebuild the muscles, which actually pulled everything back into place. Now, I'm not going to say I'm 100% back there, because, once you have an injury like that, you're never going to have a full, rebuild to your original state. It's always going to have little problems here and there. But I'll say I'm closer to the 90, 99% in that area. So, basically, guys, I want to kind of talk about this from my point of view and what they're talking about here, because some people, this is a controversial topic. I don't know why it is, but a lot of people say deadlifts are terrible to do. And I think they aren't. They're one of the greatest things to do. You should always consider doing them because they'll build your back, they'll build your legs, they'll build everything, your frame and everything. So let's jump into this, guys, and let's kind of hear what they have to say.
First question is from Andy Akins. Do you recommend deadlifts despite the internet saying it is not a great hypertrophy movement?
Oh, yeah. You know what else the internet says?
Yeah.
that the world is flat.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of people that say the world is flat.
Lizard people rule everything.
That lizard people rule. So this is silly. The deadlift is a exceptional exercise, and it does build a lot of muscle. Okay, you ask anybody who's very experienced with the deadlift, who's been training people for a long time, it has tremendous benefits. Now, I know there's studies that will say a barbell row is better for this or a pull-up is better for that. But overall, and this is one of the things that we have to consider when we look at exercises, what's their carryover to other exercises and what does that mean? You have to look at the big picture, and there's few exercises that allow you to handle the load that a deadlift will allow you to handle. In fact, for most people, it's the heaviest exercise they'll ever do.
Yes.
And the amount of tension that creates in the posterior chain, which includes the entire back, is unmatched. You're not going to get it with a barbell row. You're not going to get.
And that's something a lot of people don't understand when it comes to deadlifts. It is a load workout, and so it transitions to so many areas. And a lot of people don't really get that. The one thing I've learned from deadlifts, and there's a video that I actually created, was one of my earlier videos of me actually deadlifting 600 pounds, and nowadays I'm closer to the 7. I'm getting closer to that 700 round range, and this is a lot of set workouts. It builds everything. It builds your hamstrings. It builds your your core. It builds your hips. It builds your body. This is a lot. This is a big one. Your forearms. For me, I do everything with no straps, no belts, no nothing. So what I've learned is it's built my forearms. My forearms are very strong. I can hold a lot of weight. My grip strength's through the roof. It's building my lats because you're pulling on everything. It's transitioned into other things like, when I'm doing pulls, because I'm having to hold that weight, I have a lot of static strength now because of it. So, guys, I encourage everyone, do it, but here's the big thing. You got to focus on your form and technique. That's a big one. He's going to go into this a lot more about this. Form and technique is the most important thing you guys need to focus in on. Don't worry about the weight. The weight will come. Focus on that form and technique. If it means you have to slow down your repetitions, slow down your repetitions. And of course, everyone's going to have a different style to deadlift. If you're going to pull kind of more like a straight leg deadlift, if you're going to squat into it and pull, I like to squat into it and pull and then get myself positioned, then kind of do more of a straight leg deadlift. So kind of give me an idea, where you can go with that. And of course, it's going to transition to, you're going to get massive back. It's going to increase your testosterone because once you're building your back and your legs, that transitions to more testosterone naturally into your body. And then, of course, you're going to be able to squat a crap ton of weight. So, guys, I encourage it. Do it. Let's carry on.
Get it with a pull-up.
What places that kind of demand on your body? Nothing else even compares. Nothing works the posterior chain as well as a deadlift does. But here's where this argument comes from. Okay, if you were to talk about hypertrophy of a specific muscle, like say the rear delts, because even the rear delts are getting some work in a deadlift, right? Because a deadlift literally hits the entire posterior chain. But could I pick an exercise like
more targeted
that could target the rear delts more for hypertrophy than deadlift? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. But for an overall back, hamstring, and glute exercise, three of your biggest muscles on your body, nothing is going to build more muscle.
No, you'd have to pick. You'd have to put like 6 or 7 exercises together, and then that would be a lot of volume. It'd be a lot of work. You're not going to create as much tension in the body. And here's the deal. I know a lot of people want. Show me the guy or girl that deadlifts that's got a great back. Okay, some of the most winningest Mr. Olympians. Ronnie Coleman, who is considered by most bodybuilding fans to be the greatest of all time. Okay, like in a league of his own when it comes to bodybuilding. He was a huge deadlifter, huge. Even Dorian Yates with the massive back, he stopped deadlifting later on in his career, but he did deadlifts when he was younger in his career. Most bodybuilders do. You have now the Mr. Classic Olympia. What's his name?
C-Bum.
He deadlifts quite a bit. He's built tremendous back. I've seen it with clients. I've also, and I remember you talking about this, Adam, because you weren't a huge deadlifter until we met. And I remember you stopped doing other back.
I will say this, guys. A lot of people do the overhand deadlift style with the straps. I don't actually do that. I do over/under. It does put your bicep in a potential danger. Specifically your left bicep. I've noticed you got to be very careful. So that's one thing you guys want to be aware of if you are going to deadlift. You got to figure out what platform works for you. But for me, that's just what works best. And I'm always kind of more focused on form and technique. I do lift a lot of weight. I do a lot more sets. Or I should say I do a lot of sets but low reps. So that's kind of how I get the combination of both. But let's carry on.
Exercises.
Completely.
Yeah, talk about that. Like what happened?
For up until I got ready for competing, which was at 29, 30 years old, right? So for the first 10, 12 years or more of my lifting career, I never deadlifted, ever. It was all rows and pull-ups and hammer strength machines and dumbbell rows and bent over rows, T-bar row. I mean, I did everything else. And I didn't deadlift. And to be honest with you, I didn't deadlift because I didn't know how to really well. I didn't have the technique down. It seemed like a really difficult exercise. And I never had somebody mentor me or take me under their wing to teach me. And so I ignored it. I finally came around to learning how to do it, started to get...
That's a good one too, guys. If you guys don't have anyone training you, especially if you're new, I really wish I'd learned from someone how to deadlift properly, because that's actually what injured my back. I was just kind of lifting weight and just tossing it around and not really focused on form and technique, young, dumb, and stupid. And so unfortunately that injured me pretty badly and took a long time for me to recover. So if you are going to seriously get into it, find yourself someone who's into powerlifting or someone who's a bodybuilder who does this pretty regularly, who can show you form and technique. Because like at the gym I go to, there's a lot of guys who train people who are in the powerlifting world who show them how to deadlift properly, and they build that good foundation, because that's what we need to do. Build the foundation first. Build it. If you want to build a tall structure, a big structure, you got to build a great deep foundation. If you build a small dinky foundation, what's going to happen? You're going to have the leaning tower of pizza. It's just going to fall right over. So guys, that's what I encourage. Get yourself a good trainer if you are new to it, or someone who's a good friend who's doing it right and who can teach you properly. So yeah.
The technique down, started to see my strength go up in it really quick. And then I thought, okay, well, and the people that are huge advocates of the deadlift are, they're in that camp where it's just like deadlifting is superior to all these other lifts. So, okay, well, I've done all this other stuff for over a decade now. I've never dedicated myself to this lift to see what it could do for my physique. And since I was never a strength guy first, that's kind of why I ignored it, because I've always been the muscle building guy. And for this exact,
and it's a powerlifting exercise, right?
And so, your muscle building guys don't talk a lot about it as much, or at least not most of them. But I began to do this, and I thought, okay, well, a great way to really test this is to literally like drop all other back exercises and just deadlift. I was deadlifting at least 3 times a week, all the variations, and I would modify, I wasn't going heavy every single day and technique and stuff. And my back blew up. And not only did my back blow up, and I had picture. I wish I could still find
God,
them.
you had such a great picture.
I know. I had some before and after pictures I used to post on my Instagram when I was going through all this.
Damn,
but one of the craziest things that I thought was so significant was all the exercises that I stopped doing, that I didn't do for like over a year.
But as you notice, guys, how it's protecting his spine. All that muscle right there is protecting his spine. That's really important, especially as we get older. That's why deadlifts are super important as you get older, is because it's going to protect your spine, because everything's going to atrophy and you need something to hold your body together. And that's really a strong way to continue building the bones and also building the muscles too. So that's why I encourage it too so much, especially someone who's older, is definitely get into deadlifting, but do it once again, form technique, and you'll be very successful in life for that.
I reintroduced later on after I got my deadlift up to 550. So I went from a guy who never deadlift, was deadlifting like 135 to start off with, worked my way all the way up to 550 pounds. That's where I maxed out at. And when I got there, then I started to reintroduce those other exercises. I was stronger in all back lifts, significantly, not like 5 or 10 pounds, like significantly stronger in every other back exercise. And my back looked bigger, thicker, wider than it ever looked
this
before.
Speaks to force production, okay? And so this is something that I wanted to always chime in, because a lot of these internet people are out there like testing everything through these muscle activation devices, and how active the muscle is specifically, in that type of lift. But if you're looking at it in terms of force production, you can't even match it with the deadlift. The deadlift, you have to generate so much force to be able to pull off that movement. I keep thinking of so I think it was Dr. Andrew Ospina. He talks about force being the language of the cells. It actually determines how they're going to react, and how you need to then be able to build this tolerance and this resistance to all this force, which then, is a muscle building signal. This all comes from the central nervous system. So, yes.
Yeah, that's a big one, guys. If you guys are lifting, you're going to notice a big thing about deadlifts is they're going to burn you out quicker, due to the fact that because it is burning your central nervous system out. I have times where, after I get done deadlifting, it takes me like 2 days to recover, because I focus on that heavy weight. And so what happens is my central nervous system gets completely shut down and burnt out. And of course, what it does for me, it just makes me tired, lethargic, and just kind of bleh. So if you guys are going to seriously go and consider it, make sure you understand that you're going to have to kind of be prepared for a little bit of the mental and physical fatigue, not just physically muscles, but that just that internal system kind of just not producing. Like this week, I just was trying to deadlift. I was probably putting 80% up of what I normally do, and my system was just burnt out. I was recovering from being sick. I trained last week, and my system was just shot, and my central nervous system, my mind-body connection, was not there, and so I just couldn't seem to produce, because it's about force production. You got to fire those muscles, and your mind and body have to meet in the middle, where they can just actually work with each other in sync, because the more weight you do, it's more about mind-body connection. Because if you don't have that good mind-body connection, good luck. You're not going to be able to lift nearly as much as you normally do. So let's carry on.
there's value in hypertrophy training in isolation, but in terms of now you then being able to stretch the capacity of force production, you bring that back into a hypertrophy setting, you're going to have more strength control and you're going to get more out of the hypertrophy.
You pick anybody who works out, and the heaviest exercise that they typically can do is a deadlift. You're not going to be able to match that. And then to what Adam was saying, I need to reiterate that because I don't think a lot of people might not realize how crazy that is. Strength is a skill. So typically, if you get good at an exercise, most of the strength gains are in that exercise. And there's some carryover to other exercises. And the more similar the other exercises are, the more carryover. For example, a bench press is going to carry over more to an incline press than it will to, let's say, a barbell row, which really has nothing in common with it, right? So there's a lot of skill with strength, and it's very specific. You know how crazy it is to avoid doing all these exercises and just do one, come back to these exercises that you haven't done in a long time, and you're significantly stronger?
It blew my mind.
That speaks volumes. Now, I do want to be very clear. We're not saying just deadlift. All these exercises have tremendous value, and you want to program all of them to get complete development and strength and function. But the people who say, you know why people say deadlifts are not a good hypertrophy? I'll tell you right now why they say it's not a good hypertrophy exercise. Because they don't know how to plug it in their programming.
Yeah.
When you do a body part split, where do you put deadlifts? Well, we're doing back, but it's also hips and legs. I do legs the next day, so I don't. That's 100% what it is. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to program it in their workouts because it's not a pure back exercise. It involves the entire posterior chain, which includes the glutes and the hamstrings. That's
a big one, guys. I see a lot of people going to the gym. What they do is they just kind of do random stuff throughout the gym, and they say, "Oh, I'm just kind of doing my deadlifts. I'm just kind of doing this," and they kind of try to mix and match stuff. What I do, it should be simple, very simple. What you do is you find one thing, and you focus your ass off on it. You focus your ass off on it. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I go to do deadlifts, or I pick a primary movement, I always pick like bench, deadlifts, squats, for example. I go in there, I do my deadlifts. Everything else is secondary to me. That is my primary movement. I want to put as much energy, much focus, and lift as hard as I can. And that's going to be my primary movement. Everything else is secondary to me. So, if I'm doing deadlifts and then I'm going to go do leg press, or I'm going to do hack squats, or I'm going to do, I call them football squats. It's a machine. Basically, it's kind of sits on it. It's like you're curdling into it and then you kind of push up into it. The point is, you should find one major movement. Go for it. Attack it. Get as strong as you can and just wear yourself out on that workout with good form and good technique. Then move on to the next one. And that's all I do. I just keep it simple. Of course, I'm not a bodybuilder, so it's a little bit different, but I'm more interested in strength and power with a good look and a good physique. So let's carry on.
That's the main reason.
Well, the other reason, too, is to the point at the very beginning of this episode where we talked about the learning curve of this. Like, if I judge that deadlift based off the first 3 to 6 months, I would actually come back to you guys and say, oh, T-bar rows and bent over rows and dumbbell rows are way better.
Yeah.
Why? Because it took me at least a month or two straight consistently lifting the deadlift before my technique was even good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Before I could even kind of like, before that switch went off, like, oh, this is how I fire this movement. Yeah. To kind of what Justin was talking about with the CNS. Then once that started to come together, I was like, oh, okay, now I got this. Now I can start to really load this thing. And then that's where, and so it didn't really come on until months, 8, 9, 10, 12, a year later, did I really start to see the compounding effects.
Yeah, that's a big one. It took me, personally, almost 3 years to find my way I deadlift. I tried different ways. I tried to pull straight legs. I tried to squat into it. And I finally just kind of got to the point where I was like, what am I doing? And so I got really, really focused on my form and technique. And I started looking at some of the best deadlifters. And I looked at the two major deadlifters that I enjoy watching the most. It's going to be Eddie Hall, Larry Wheels. And I knew I was going to find something in between there. So what I do is, if you watch me, I kind of lift off the floor like Eddie Hall, and then when I'm in my deadlift, I continue my workout like Larry Wheels. So you kind of squat into it, roll in. You're gonna kind of roll into it and then squat up, and then once you're up, then I go into more of a straight-legged deadlifts, kind of like Larry Wheels. That's kind of how I find that it works for me. But once again, you got to find your arm length, connective tissue, muscle length, if you're short, long, tall, all that good stuff. You got to figure out what's going to work for you. And hopefully you have someone who can kind of guide you and watch you from a third person perspective and kind of show you how to set yourself up and what your works, where you're fatally week out, what's your strength within that workout. So
of consistently deadlifting. But if you were to measure it, and this is why I don't like when we talk about these 6 to 12 week studies, you take somebody who's a novice lifter and you say, go do a deadlift, and they're going from never doing it before, or go do a T-bar row, which is pretty easy to teach somebody how to do, and then let's measure in 6 weeks where are you going. You'll probably gain more from the T-bar row.
Yeah, and the other thing, look, I'll tell you, this is
100%.
You can't always tell who deadlifts, but you can often tell who doesn't deadlift. Like when you see physique competitors or bodybuilders on stage and they turn around, Adam and I have done this before, where we'll look and be like, oh, that guy doesn't deadlift, that person doesn't deadlift. It develops a thickness. So for people who are interested in just hypertrophy, it's an excellent exercise for developing depth of the back, especially the muscles that surround the spine. So when you see people with a really well-developed, nice-looking back, and they have the back where it kind of dips into where the spine is, those are the muscles you really get really well with a deadlift. Lats, pull-ups are probably going to hit the lats more than a deadlift, but it's a phenomenal exercise. It's hard, it takes practice, but it's a excellent exercise for hypertrophy. And if you don't believe me, look, here's a challenge: implement deadlifts in your workout for a few months. Do them right for 3 or 4 months. At the very least, you're not going to lose muscle, but I guarantee you'll probably end up gaining muscle, and you'll be.
I feel like the reason why this gets popular on the internet still is because there's so many people that want this to be true.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. A lot of people, and I've even heard guys, that strongman who was really big, say, no, deadlifts are terrible for you. They're a risk. There's more risk than reward. In my personal experience, if I hadn't been doing deadlifts, my back would be in a lot of pain. I'd probably not be nearly as strong as I am. I'd be miserable all the time, sciatic all the time. And I'm grateful I continue to push through it, and I became as strong as I did. And I think the reward is tenfolds, And this is why I say, if you're doing it wrong, then there's a major risk to it. But if you do it right, and you're smart, and you actually take your time to build that good foundation, and don't rush it, and don't slam the weights, and try not to tear yourself apart, you can become incredibly strong. You'll have a back made of iron and stone, and that's what you want: iron and stone. Something that's not going to give under weight and compression. Especially if something happens in life, you need to handle a situation. You want to be there strong. You don't want to be there kind of just watching on the sideline trying to record with your video. You want to be there in the fight. So carry on.
It's hard, and we can avoid it.
And dude, I admit I was one of those people too. I wanted that to be true too. I wanted, that's why I wasn't doing squatting and deadlifting that much, because I read the same stuff, heard the same shit, and I was like, yeah, see, I'm a hypertrophy guy. I'm not a strength guy. I don't need to do this bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, you want it to be true because it's hard. It's hard to learn the movement, and it works your ass to do it, man. It's not easy. So I find the only reason why I get so much traction is because so many people want it to be true so bad. And it's like, okay, if you want to just do rows and the rest of your life and just
which is a great exercise. Nothing wrong with rows.
No, and by the way,
it ain't gonna replace a deadlift.
Right, and you can build a good physique and never do those things.
You're right.
I had a good physique when I was 25. I didn't have a weak ass physique.
Well, I'll tell you this: if you do barbell squats, you can get away with not deadlifting in the sense that you'll develop some good core strength, some good lower back strength. If you don't do barbell squats and don't do deadlifts, it's not a good idea. If you build a lot of muscle on your body,
that was me.
No
I didn't squat or deadlift really all the way in my 20s.
Yeah, you end up losing, especially if you build a lot of muscle and strength around a physique that doesn't squat and doesn't deadlift. There's a lot of functionality that you miss out on. Not to mention the muscle that you miss out on. So.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. I appreciate you joining me. Hopefully you guys learned something new. Hopefully you guys, if you guys got any questions, I should say, definitely hit me up. I'm always willing to answer. And, if you want me to create some more videos on deadlifting and how performance techniques, things like that, I'm always happy to do that for you guys. But anyway, guys, I appreciate, once again, all the subscribers. Like it and subscribe this, of course, if you could. Any comments would appreciate. Other than that, Bear Nation out. Have a good one. I'll catch you on the next one.